wanted to start with just an intro of saying one book or movie that you loved as a child. And who would like to start? Monica, go.
Hello, everyone. I love Miracle on 34th Street.
Okay, great.
It's a story about Santa Claus. Is Santa Claus real, for those who might not know that story? And it's partially why I ended up in New York.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
I want to share that. I loved Home Alone. That was my favorite.
Home Alone. Oh my goodness.
I watched it so many times as a child, and I still watch it so many times. That's my favorite movie.
That's so fun.
Yeah. Okay. Who else would like to go? Angelina?
One of my favorite books when I was a child was Snow White with Seven Dwarfs.
Oh, nice. Can you name all of them?
Oh, no, I'm not sure.
That's okay. I can't either. Sleepy, dopey, dog. I don't know. That's all I know.
Grumpy.
Okay. Happy. Yes, I like Happy.
Well, I was going to say, because someone named Grumpy, I'm happy to go next.
Okay, Matt.
So a book that I really loved as a child, in fact, I think it was the first novel that I read, was part of a series called Red Wall, and it's basically about a sort of kind of communal, like, monastery of anthropomorphic animals that sort of engage in various adventures, and it's full of warriors and pirates and quests for cool stuff.
Wonderful.
Yeah. When I was a child, the best book that I loved was a novel in Malayalam, that is my mother tongue. It became a movie, and all of us loved this movie because it was a love story. That was one reason. Then there were so many beautiful songs, even after 50 years. These songs are sung by everyone here today. So we loved this. It resembles the story of Old Man and the Sea.
Oh,
Some parallel
wow.
find. Yeah. Hemingway's Old Man and the Sea. This is also about fishermen and fisherfolk. A person going out into the sea. Later, when I started teaching Hemingway, I understood the real meaning. Because as a child, I could not understand. This is a struggle between human being and the universal elements, the sea and man. Like that.
Great, so, thank you.
Linda,
Emmanuel.
Emmanuel has typed in the chat, Coming to America with Eddie Murphy.
I love that movie. That's great. So far, I've known everyone y'all said. So,
I would like to share.
Yes.
My favorite movie was Guns of Navarone.
Say it again.
Guns of Navarone.
That's one I don't know.
A movie. Movie.
That's a classic.
It's a classic World War II movie.
Guns of Navarone. It's a Gregory Peck.
It's a beautiful movie.
Yes, and Anthony Quinn, I guess, the two actors. I love to watch that movie, and I was so happy, so excited. Guns and water, sea, and so on. It was so impressive, and so much adventure and action in it. So I love that movie.
I'll have to watch it now with your recommendations.
That's great for a peace builder, Father James. I love it.
Yes. It was Hollywood movie. Yes,
Yeah.
Hollywood. Yes, yes. I saw on a big. I saw on a big.
Karima? Oh, sorry. Karima?
The first one which comes to my mind is by a Swedish author, but it's a film also, which is so well known in Germany. It's called Pippi Langstrumpf. It's like Pippi Longstocking.
Yes.
And she's
Yes.
a girl who lives alone in a house and is so strong. She can lift her horse like that. And she has two friends and they go through all kinds of adventures.
That's great.
Amazing.
In a way, what we're doing is telling a favorite book or movie when we were a child. So welcome. I'm so glad you could be here.
Thank you. Me too. I'm very happy to be able to connect.
Thank you.
Okay, a movie, a comic, The Flintstones. I like that comic very much.
The Flintstones. Okay, great.
Flintstones. And I think that it is why I became an anthropologist.
Oh, wow.
The
Amazing.
Flintstones. I like it to go to the past and to see how things happened at the beginning, etc., etc.
Who knew that Flintstones would do that? That's amazing. Subi went already. Who else? Maria, you want to go? Q2?
Yes, but I think Kutubi is raising her hand.
Yes, got it. Q2?
Maya, you go ahead. I'll share after yours.
Okay, so I watched several times The Sound of Music. I love
Wow.
it.
Yes.
Me too.
The
Yes,
Big
yes,
Family as mine. I think
Mhm.
that was preparing me for the Big Family. And also, as a teacher, I usually loved to use Lion King because there's a lot of work to be done with that film.
Totally. Deb, did you go?
Yeah, since when I was a child, I didn't know much about movie. All I knew reference from my school, a storybook by the great Nobel laureate Rabindranath Tagore, and of course, being a Bengali, we are so in love with Tagore. This story was about a conversation of the child and a mother, and child expressing how he can protect his mother from all the bad things, from the looters. So the whole poet, the poet has written the whole poem is about the expressions of the child, the protecting the mother, and how sweet, beautifully it was just written, and I still love that story.
And what's the name of it again?
It's called the Little Braveheart.
Okay.
It's kind of English name, but its name in Bengali, chotto chele, like a little kid. So Little Braveheart, and he just expression was so nice.
Nice. Thank you. Alice?
Thank you. I don't remember the name of a book, but there was a chapter book that I read when I was a child, and it was about two kids that lived next door to each other, and their families lived in houses next door, and there was a tree in between, and they would climb out the window, across the branches of the tree, and in the window to visit each other. And I thought that was about the most adventuresome, wonderful, cool thing I'd ever heard.
That's great. Okay, did I get everyone?
Q2.
Yeah, Linda. Yes.
Oh,
there are two things. One is you can say comic, Dennis the Menace, because I was nicknamed as Dennis by my parents. I was like very much notorious among my siblings. So I love to read even now, and I have all those pictures of Dennis with me even in my wardrobes now.
Great.
And then there was this one school trip which was like they took us to show this one movie which was first 3-dimension movie in India, Chota Chetan. So this small boy used to save his village, his forest and animals, and he has this power to disappear and then help, those who are in distress. So that 3D movie has like a lot of impact on like when I was hardly 8 year old at that time. So even now I love to watch that, and there are like some new versions of this movie coming up. So I make sure that I watch all those versions. Yeah.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Linda, may I just say that I've been in touch with Karen and I made a mistake telling her the time. So she's going to be here in about 20 minutes. She was misinformed about when to get here.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So today we are opening with our candle. And if you have one, you can light it. And if you don't, you can enjoy the one on the screen. I've been lighting a candle every single day on my altar for Inouye and all the troubles that are happening in Venezuela. So I like this one today for all of us. Today is our session is on storytelling. So I thought I would do the opening with a couple stories, little stories, especially since it's next month is Golden Rule Day. I thought I'd use a story that had a thing about the Golden Rule. So the first one's called The Old Man and His Grandson. There once was a grandpa who lived with his family. As Grandpa grew older, he began to slobber and spill his food, so the family made him eat alone. When he dropped his bowl and broke it, they scolded him and got him a cheap wooden bowl. Grandpa was so unhappy. Now one day, the young grandson was working with wood. "What are you doing?" Mom and Dad asked. "I'm making a wooden bowl," he said, "for when you two get old and must eat alone." Mom and Dad then looked sad and realized how they were mistreating Grandpa, so they decided to keep quiet when he spills his food and to let him eat with the family. And then the next one is called Heaven and Hell. A woman died and was taken to heaven. The angel wanted her to see hell, so they stopped there first. Hell had a lake of nutritious stew, but the people only had 12-foot spoons and so were frustrated when they tried to feed themselves. So the people were miserable and starving. Then the woman was taken to heaven. Amazingly, heaven was exactly the same, with the same stew and 12-foot spoons. But here the people were happy and well fed. The woman asked, "Why are these people so different?" The angel replied, "They feed each other. These people have learned the way of love." So that's our little opening. So I wanted to start out with just talking about why we think storytelling is important to our work for peace and justice. And you can raise your hand or type in chat. So I see we lost Emmanuel. Maybe he'll be able to call back in. I think we lost him. But why do you think storytelling is important for our work for peace and justice? Karima.
I think that it creates understanding. If we want to work for peace and justice, we need to understand what the other person is about, and also empathy. It will make us see we're all human beings and we have similar stories to tell, or we can understand each other's stories if they are told maybe in a certain way.
Great. Yes.
For me, I think storytelling is important because the kind of work we do is very personal. So unless, experiences and emotions are not communicated, it can get very abstract.
Great. Great. Kutub wrote in, I will get you next, Abraham. Ketub wrote in chat, to keep peace, building legacy alive among community and future generations. Abraham?
Yeah, Linda, storytelling is very important because a story can speak volumes. Instead of making a speech, when we explain whatever we have to say with the help of a story, it will be so appealing to the listeners because everybody loves story. And it can make wonders also because usually we cite a story from John Paul Lederach's book, which made so much difference, when the two African tribes, they were fighting for long, and when they were brought before a table, again they were fighting, and no solution was at hand. But suddenly a young boy stood and he addressed the opponent leader as father. Father, I see. Now I can understand what you say. The very word father brought so much change in the other person, because then he started loving the other party like his own son. So this story, whenever we recite it, that makes a lot of difference. There are so many examples like this. Stories are so powerful.
Yeah, create understanding. Maria wrote in, it builds empathy. Angelina said, breaking walls and create feeling, deep understanding, feeling of love of one another. Biswa Deb connects us to our humanity. Other reasons that stories are important to our work.
NOA has her hand up, Linda.
NOA?
Yes, I was trying to write down about this.
It's okay.
I wanted to hear other people too. And I think it's important because we can, it allowed us to create a common ground from the heart.
Yes, yes.
And, that led you to connect with the unity, with the whole. Because when you speak from your heart and your own life, and the others speak from their own lives, I can see, or you can see the connection. The life is life, and the emotion are emotion over the word, and so it creates a common ground from the heart, and we can identify with others and with the whole of as beings, as human beings.
Great, thank you. Father James?
I feel that telling story is very important because people give attention to it. And so I'm going to tell you a story. Then at once people who are listening, they become attentive. And then a story begins, there is a suspense in it. And they want to see, what happens after that, what happens in that. So, and many times, a story has two aspects, good and evil. And there is in the story there is a hero, and the story there is a villain. And also I see many times people make themselves part of the story. I am like this, I am like that. And then in the story there is also a lesson, there is a moral at what happens at the end.
So the stories create lessons and morals?
Yes, morals, and some of the stories are very short, but they carry a lot of moral in it, a lot of thought, a lot of material to think about how one should be good, how one should keep on struggling, and at times the person may have to go against the stride which is going on. Maybe violence there going on there, or fire is there. But I mean, moral to my understanding and my life, I see morals are always good. They're positive, and from darkness to light, from evil to good, and so on. So stories are very, very important.
Right. Thank you. So, did I miss anyone? Is there anyone else?
That's Monica.
Monica?
Yeah, I think that I really agreed with both Father Chandan and Inouye when they were talking about it just makes it more accessible. People listen better, but it also gives you that opportunity to share a little bit about who you are in connecting with other people.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to go right into storytelling and telling our stories to each other. And I had mentioned to y'all to bring 3 stepping stones, and I think you might have read in the chapter about that exercise. But because we have a lot more people today, we're only going to tell one of our stepping stones. But how it works, if you have more time, like if you have 15 minutes per person, you would actually have people go around. I'm going to tell you the whole exercise so you can use it in the future in your work. I have people take 3 stones, and usually I just pick up pretty stones and collect them and give them to people. And I'll say, think about something that is important in your life that made you be the person you are today. Or in particular, today, we're going to talk about one stepping stone that led us to do the work we do today, the work we do for URI. And sometimes those stories can be very sensitive and a vulnerable place. They might share something deep and spiritual. They might share something traumatic. But it needs to be a story that was a real turning point in your life that led you. It could be something when you were 5 years old. It could be something when you were an adult that led you to begin to understand that you were going to work for peace and justice. And one of the things we have to make sure of as we tell our stories is that people are telling deep, really sensitive stories. And so our job is to really listen, not to ask questions, but just to listen. Deep listening from the heart. So I want each story to not be any longer. It could be 90 seconds. That's what I usually tell my stories in, very short. Or they could be up to 5 minutes for those of us who like to talk a lot, but no more than that. So when you go into a small group, I'm going to ask that you choose a timekeeper to keep time for you. And each person is going to go around and tell their story in less than 5 minutes, preferably 2 or 3 minutes. And then after each story, just have a moment of silence to reflect on what was said. And the timekeeper will be in charge of knowing if that's 10 seconds or 20 seconds or a minute, whatever you feel is needed. So Tony's going to put you into groups. I'm going to give you a few minutes here first to allow you to begin to think about your story. So we're going to have a few minutes of journaling and reflection. Think about your story, write some notes so you can tell it very succinctly to your group. Does that make sense? Any questions? It's a story of a life event, a stepping stone that led you to work for peace and justice. Okay, so we'll have a couple minutes of silence for you to think about your story. Okay, so we're going to go into groups of 3 people, I think, possibly one group of 2. And reminder to just choose a timekeeper to help keep us on time, to take no more than 5 minutes, and that includes a little moment of silence. And just tell your stories. Thank you. When Tony puts you in the group, you'll need to accept. And he'll give you a 1-minute warning when you're coming out of the group.
Linda, do you want me to give them a 5-minute timing so they know when to switch as well?
Oh, you could do that. I don't know. I think with the timekeeper we don't need to.
All right.
I think it might disrupt things.
Okay.
No. Hello again.
Hello.
Hi, Monica.
Hello.
Hello.
I appreciated your email, Abraham.
Thank you, Monica.
Karima, it looks like you're sitting in a rose-colored room. Is it sunset where you are?
I have like orange curtains, and it's a very nice and sunny day. So it's all the orange and red curtains, sunlight.
Nice.
Okay, so we're going to go around and say 1 word or 2 or 3 words, but not a whole sentence, about how hearing other people's stories made you feel. How did it make you feel? Just 1 or 2 words. Karima, would you like to start?
It made me feel affection for my partners.
Affection. Wonderful.
And friendship.
Okay. Abraham?
Yeah, it was really enriching to listen to Father James.
What was the word?
Enriching. Great experience. Great.
Enriching. Thank you.
Enriching.
In a way?
Appreciation.
Appreciation. Great. This way, Dad.
Call to action.
Call to action. Great. Monica?
Connected.
Connected. Father James?
Passion and commitment.
Passion and what?
Commitment.
Commitment. Great. Passion and commitment.
We were so connected that I was thinking connected, and my friend in the group said connected. So,
okay.
Connected plus.
Already connected.
Connected plus, yes. That's wonderful.
Super connected.
Alice?
Inspired.
Inspired. Okay. Is there any other?
It's Linda.
Not on video that I don't see.
Kutub here.
Kutub.
Yes, Alice, you told my word inspiration, but I would also say there was commonalities, you know.
Commonalities. Angelina?
Also interconnected. I feel that we are interconnected, and love.
Interconnected and love. Did I miss anyone?
Yes, I was thinking so much of commonality that my partner actually spoke the word commonality. So I'll just say commonality plus plus.
Okay. Wonderful. I like that there's so much overlap that people have. Great, thank you. Okay. So I'm getting feedback on someone. I'm trying to figure out who it is. Okay, it stopped. So whatever you did, it went. Oh no, Physical Deb, I think you need to mute. Okay, is that good? That's good. Okay, so next I want to go around and say, think about how we could use this simple exercise, like the stepping stones, either one stepping stone or 3 stepping stones, however you decide to do it with someone else. How could you use this to help your groups or your advisory board or others, the CCs? What are ideas that you would have of how you could use this? In a way, was your hand up? You're muted.
Yes, but I was thinking. I was going inside myself looking for this answer.
Okay.
I think it was before the end.
All right.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Linda, Subi, and QTube have their hands up.
Okay, Subi?
I can use this exercise to connect the older and the newer CCs because they will still have a common story to share. So I think that create as a good bonding factor.
Mm-hmm. QTube?
Yes, Linda, like, you know, it will help identify what you say, the issues and also the relationship between the CCs or and the community where we are working. So it's kind of like, you know, we are notified about after like storytelling or all this, you know, sharing. Like we would like to have this kind of, you know, what do you say, mechanism in the community or in the CC. So it's like it gives a specific learning, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great. Great. Okay.
Linda, would you repeat that for me, please?
Yes. Helps identify issues and work between CCs. Anything else, Q2? Did I get it? In a way?
Yes. Okay, I think it will help to create, because in Latin America we have different faith, but also we have different cultures, very different cultures. So I think it will help to make like a collective vision from the own stories of life, because even we have differences in culture, there is something that unites, and is the way that we choose to work for peace or for a common goal. Mm-hmm. So I think it will be very helpful to find these common goals that we have. Mm-hmm. Not because the mind let you, okay, I want to be known. It's because your own life put in this way.
Right, right. Wonderful. Thank you. Abraham? Abraham, you're on mute.
Yeah, storytelling will help a lot in creating understanding between the parties because this is a good exercise in learning the art of listening, and this gives an exposure to the other side. So we can listen to the other side, which will solve many problems always. So this is a very good tool that we can use among parties and also between CCs, and it's a very good tool for mediation among the parties of conflict and like that.
Mm-hmm. Great. Great.
Linda, so I was thinking about what Abraham was saying, the art of listening. And when we are thinking of a CC, because a CC is a group of people, I think that sometimes we don't get the story of the different members of the CC.
Mm-hmm.
So a challenge I see is the richness of the story of each of the members of the CC that is something that we don't usually reach, and how we could go into that. So what the strong value of having Zoom meetings or whatever with as many members as possible, so that the primary contact or someone in the group or the organization doesn't become the only story we get from the CC.
Mm-hmm.
I see a challenge here.
Mm-hmm. Great, great. Okay, so help to get to know the individual stories within the CCs. Does that capture it?
Yeah, it does.
And I want to see Angelina first, and then Father James had his hand up. Angelina?
Thank you, Linda. For me, this is a very useful tool for new groups when we need to make an icebreaker or to make people feel more close to one another. And in this way, we can encourage people who are more shy or don't want to share their stories, by giving our examples, and invite them to join us in sharing their stories.
Wonderful, and wonderful. Father James, did you have your hand up? Yeah. Yes.
Linda, Biswadep and Prima also have their hands up.
Okay.
I would say that sharing our stories and exercise, it was an expression of trust and openness towards one another. And also in the CCs also, it could be also pride there when they share their stories. They go into the past and they share in openness and trust that there is something we can learn from each other. And I also see in our lives, I can now say about Abraham and myself, there are some incidents, there are some events which become a foundation stone.
Mm-hmm.
We lay our lives, we lay our dreams, we lay our future on those on those foundation stones, on those stepping stones. I also brought this stone to show. This is what was my stepping stone of getting into interfaith dialogue 43 years ago, 1977.
Nice.
And then also we see that in sharing stories that we can learn from one another, we can be inspired from one another, and also if we have a common goals like CCs, working for justice, working for peace, working for harmony, working for reconciliation, we have a lot to share with one another and learn from one another.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Welcome, Karen. I see Maria has been chatting to you about what we're doing, and we were all telling our stories in small groups. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, who was next? Biswadeb?
Yes, thank you. I love the storytelling, and I use the storytelling in the first sense when I go to the community, meet with people, especially in a conflict zone. I find it very helpful to divert or channelize the attention of the people from the toughness of realities of life. And, you know, because it's also connected to humanity ground. And to find out a new story that really talk about the richness of the history of the culture in a particular region, especially the present situation in our country. I know there's so much stories being used to divide, to, you know, segregate people in the name of religions and culture, which is not correct. So storytelling is really very, very important. It's becoming more important these days.
Yes.
Because, you know, in social media, people are using fake stories. So that's what important, to go to the community. So it really divert their attentions and connect on a humanity ground.
Thank you. Let's see, I have a list here. Karima, you're next.
Yeah, the first thing that came to my mind, because we want to use Zoom calls more in the Europe region, and one of the topics we had on our minds was kind of what keeps you inspired doing that work, and that would be a perfect starter. And it's so nice that you can break into groups where you have more time and a more intimate atmosphere, and then maybe collect feedback from the group. So I think that would be very nice.
Yes.
But likewise, at the physical regional assembly, it could be a lovely way as a warm-up, because then it brings into presence exactly what people will have present, will remember what draws them into that work. And so that's a lovely start, like for an assembly.
Yes,
and then
great.
came one more thing, and that's for visits. When we visit CCs, that might be also lovely to just hear from people. And that's not only their motivation, but also a little bit of their history. So
thank you.
Linda, I didn't quite get all Biswadeb's. If someone could help me a little bit with that one, please.
Biswadeb, could you type in chat some of what you said for Tony? That'd be great. Thank you. Monica, you're next.
I think I'm off mute. Yes. Some of the things have already been said, but I think it's particularly good that it not only invites people to participate, there's a structure that demands participation. So it absolutely sets the structure to make everybody equal.
Yes. And I think I would just add to that I think it's a safe way, because people can tell whatever level they want to tell. Yeah. So next up was Alice.
Thanks, Linda. We often talk about benefits of the network. And to me, this storytelling exercise is a great benefit of the network that RCs can share with one CC member and then invite them to do it with their CC. So it can be used as a tool within CCs. And I would encourage people to use the notes that Linda and Tony will send out from this to think about how you could explain this activity to a CC. And of course, if you do it in an assembly, as Karima suggested, that's great. And then I think anytime you do it with people, think about whether it makes sense to encourage them to do it with others in their CCs. Because it's a great example of a usable tool that can benefit others. And I think also anytime there's a topical discussion, you can use this about that topic.
Yes, yes. Were there any other hands? Abraham. You need to unmute. Oh, there you go.
I have already said in the beginning, I shared already.
Okay, great. Thank you. So Karima said it's another workshop that we could replicate with the CC as it is. Yes. Great. And I'll just tell you, I was at a board meeting with about 20 people, and I got put on the spot and asked to do a 30-minute opening for people to get to know new and old board members. And so I thought of this exercise. It's become a fallback exercise. If you read the chapter in the book, you know that it was one that I did in an emergency when I didn't know what I was going to do. And I often have people say, oh, can I keep the stone? And one woman said, you know, I haven't told this story ever to my husband, and I want to go home and tell my stepping stones and do it within my family. So some people just aren't used to storytelling. A lot of us are, but some people who've never done storytelling before find it life-changing. And so in this board meeting, I said, okay, find someone you don't know and tell one. I got them to think about their 3 stepping stones. And I had them find someone they didn't know and tell their first one. Then I had them find someone else they knew, didn't know, and tell the second one. And then the third one, finding people, if they did know everybody, the people they knew the least. And it was a tremendous success. So it's a great fallback exercise. And as you can see, you can do it in a small amount of time or a bigger amount of time, which also works very well. So thank you for that. Lots and lots of ideas. We're going to take a 10-minute break. And I usually tell y'all 5 minutes because it takes y'all 10 minutes to get back, some people. But I don't want to cheat the 5-minute people who come back in 5 minutes. But really, really be back in 10 minutes because we're going to start right on time. So, and do we have a break? Yes. So get coffee, eat a snack, go dancing or do a yoga stretch or whatever you need to do.
I like it.
I decided not to put the toilet on there, but we all know that one. Opening line. It's really important to capture your audience because you have to capture your audience in like the first 30 seconds or their mind starts wandering and goes off into other things and misses what you have to say. So you need a very compelling opening line that grabs their attention. You want it to have maybe some action in it, depending on what you're talking about. So whether your story's long or short, it's really important to do this. So I'm going to read a story of my own that I wrote. It's a 90-second story, so you can see how much you can say in 90 seconds. Oh, I just almost caught my paper on fire with my candle here. I got to be careful. And I'm going to pause after the first line and just reflect on it for a minute and see if it captures your attention. I woke up one night to find 5 men in white hoods standing around my bed. My heart froze as I tried to see the eyes behind the mask. The Ku Klux Klan had broke into my house to teach me a lesson. I had become their enemy by aligning myself with African Americans, a traitor in their eyes to the white race. I had hired Black employees at the place I worked, and the white men did not want to work with them. They had warned me many times, and I had only hired more people of color. After 2 days of capture and torture, I escaped, leaving North Carolina, and moved to a low-income African-American community in Charleston, South Carolina. There I met an elderly woman, Septima Clark, who was often referred to as the grandmother of the Civil Rights Movement. I declared I would only go back to North Carolina when I was able to fight the Ku Klux Klan. Mrs. Clark taught me that that was a no-win proposition, that the only way I could win was by building a society where the Ku Klux Klan could no longer exist. 6 years later, I moved back to North Carolina to organize and build power to eliminate the KKK. So that example both ends, it's a very short story, 90 seconds. I wrote 3 stories that are all less than 5 minutes, and all of big stepping stones in my life. And the last sentence was indicated to show the lesson. So my lesson was that I had learned I couldn't go back to fight the Klan as I had first wanted to, but that I actually went back to organize and build power to eliminate the KKK. So were y'all able to hear, did that first sentence capture your attention? Okay, yes. I see, yes. So
I thought that you were going to tell that you were in a hospital. with all the-
in white mask. Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. Yes. That is another way to think about it. So I want to give you some examples of some opening lines. Great first lines are, I wish you could have been there, is a way to do it. I've never forgotten the first time whatever. It was one of the most exciting times of my life. It was the scariest moment of my life. So you can kind of see how these first lines can capture people's excitement. So what I'm going to ask you to do, we're going to leave this slide up because you could use any of these examples, but I want you to write one opening line, just one sentence, that of the story you just told. If you can think of an opening line, and you can either write it in chat or when we come back, we'll say it aloud and write down the lines. But we'll keep these examples up, and I'm going to give you a couple minutes to work on an opening line. Okay? Obviously, you don't have to use these examples. Okay, so we've got a couple started in the chat that I really love. Oh, how can I forget that fascinating moment in my life, of my life? Father James said that one. And Subi wrote, join me to applaud your work, our work. Love that. And okay, so who else would like to either say? Inaway has her hand up. Okay, Inaway, what's your first line?
Yes, I'll never forget the first time I made direct contact with the injustice of the condition of daily life of poor neighborhood in the city.
Okay, can you say it one more time?
Okay, I'll never forget the first time I made direct contact with the injustice of the conditions of daily life in poor neighborhoods of the cities. Because I was a child when I made this contact. This is my story.
Great.
And I think it was my first time.
Great, thank you. Who wrote, I was among you. And Karen wrote, just imagine for a moment, wait a minute, I lost it here a minute. Just imagine for a moment your life without running water. And Angelina wrote, I will never forget the first time I met people from another faith.
Linda QTube had written, I was that her first line is, I was among you.
Right, I was among you. Okay, thank you. Alice, after that, why wouldn't I offer what I can do to work for justice? Great. Bismarck Deb wrote, it was the moment of light. Love that. That's beautiful. Bethlehem wrote, if I was there at that moment. These are beautiful first lines. Monica?
When I arrived in Washington, D.C. for the ribbon around the Pentagon, I saw a familiar face and knew I was in the right place.
When you arrived in Washington, D.C. for the ribbon around
the Pentagon.
The Pentagon. I was there for that. Maybe we saw each other and didn't know it.
Yeah.
I saw familiar faces.
And knew I was in the right place.
Yes. Wonderful. That was an amazing time.
It got me to the UN, Linda. I was the director of the project at the UN.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. Maria wrote, we thought life would always be the same. Yeah. Welcome, Mahmoud. We're getting first lines of what we said. What did you say? Okay. These are beautiful. Thank you. Does anyone have anything else?
Karima.
In a way?
No, Karima.
Oh, Karima. Thank you. Karima?
I'll never forget this moment, sensing it would change my life forever.
Beautiful. Oh my gosh, I want to hear all these stories now. I wish we could. But another time, maybe. Those are beautiful. Thank you so much. So these are beautiful first lines. I think all of us are intrigued and want to hear the rest of his story. So I know that I'm going to be asking people for their stories in the future. And if you have written a story, I'd love to read it. You can email it to me, or email it to all of us if you'd like to have people read your story and comment. Okay, so storytelling tip number 2, how we use storytelling in talks and presentations. And so it's not just a better way to connect with the audience, it also improves actual retention of the information. So studies have been done all about storytelling, although many of us have been part of storytelling for thousands of years. I often say that even though I grew up in poverty, I was very wealthy because stories were passed down on both sides of my family. And I know 16 generations of my mother's family history. And I know 13 generations of my father's family history. And that is such a wealth that so many people have had destroyed through various ways of wars and Holocausts and slavery, and don't have that wealth of knowledge about their families. And so I consider that a great privilege. But in talks and presentations, there's been all kinds of studies done now that shows that people actually, if you touch their emotions with stories, that they'll remember that much more than facts and figures. So I wanted to give an example of one story that made a point for me much stronger. And there's lots of ways, you've probably heard this done before, lots of ways to do it. But everyone in the United States especially, and most of the world, heard about the $700 billion U.S. bank bailout that President Bush signed in 2008. Does people remember hearing that? A $700 billion U.S. bank bailout that taxpayers had to pay. So how do you tell that? The number 700 billion has no meaning to me. So imagine if you heard it explained this way. If you were alive when Jesus walked the earth and you were still alive today and you spent 1 million every single day from then until now, you still wouldn't have spent that amount. You would still have 2 more years that you could spend $1 million a day. How does that amount of money then sit with you? It has a very different weight to it. And when I heard that, I was like,
200 years left.
200 years, what did I say?
2.
Oh, 2 years, 200 years left to spend $1 million a day. So you should also always consider a story at the very beginning of a talk that you're giving, and that's very important in the first 30 to 90 seconds. And in those few moments, you could tell a story like this one that I just told that gets a point across, and then you can go more into facts and figures. You could talk about what that meant to what was cut in our U.S. budgets, like Medicare and health care and all of those things that we were adding to our deficit. All of those things you can talk about, but once you've said that in a story fashion, you've got people's attention. So another way, we're going to go to tip number 3, is using stories for fundraising and communication. So this is a really important place. I think stories have helped me raise more money than any facts or reports or figures that I can do. Stories of success, stories of hope. And I was asked a few years ago if I would go down to work with farm workers in Central Florida on how to do fundraising. And they had had some of the best fundraising experts go and do workshops for them, and they were totally paralyzed. And so this New World Foundation at the time in New York asked me if I would go down there and do a workshop that maybe these experts hadn't been successful in doing. So when I went down there, the whole group spoke multiple languages. We had to have 6 translators so I could understand folks, 6 different languages. And what I found out about the other workshops, because I'd been through a couple of them, was that they were always telling you what you had to say. Here's what you need to say to donors. Here's how you say it. And for someone who doesn't talk in that way of talking, that was very off-putting and very disempowering. And so what I did was I asked the farm workers to forget everything they had learned about how they had been told to speak to donors and what they had to say to donors, and to forget that. And then I had them tell a story, kind of like you did, of why they were a part of this organization and how it made them feel. And there were these powerful, amazing stories that I got to hear. And once they had written down their story and shared it with everyone, I asked them to then think about the fact that they were going to go tell this story to a group of white wealthy donors in the other part of town who had no clue about how they lived and what their struggles were. So then all of a sudden they're interpreting their story for someone who has no clue. And that was coming from a very empowering place, because all of a sudden they're telling their story to someone who's clueless. So they knew they had to give them background and some actual facts, but they were still keeping the story from their heart. And that felt very empowering to people. And so then, only then, I asked them to go back and think about what they had learned about fundraising and what pieces was useful to them to continue to do. And a lot of it had to do with follow-up and thank yous and that kind of thing. But they actually were extremely empowered and excited to tell their stories from their heart place that started with their personal stories. And it made them very successful at fundraising. It's a group that's still going 20 years later, very powerful, have won a lot of things, and have become really powerful fundraisers. And in fact, one of the men who was telling their story the first time in that workshop later won a national award for unsung heroes. And I got to see him speaking in front of this huge, very powerful, a lot of government officials and stuff. And I was like, and it all started with just learning to tell their story from a place that they had power, from a place of their heart and what they cared about and loved. And I think this is a really important lesson for us to remember for our own fundraising, but also in how to teach others who might be powerless in the face of people who they see as over them or as wealthier or as more educated, that if you can help them tell a story, their own story, and then from that place, an empowered place, help them figure out what else they need to say. They figure it out themselves. What else do you need to make people understand your story? It makes a big difference. So I'm going to ask you now to take a couple minutes and write a very brief story, just a minute or two long, about something that has changed minds or built cooperation and trust, or about a success of your work in URI. Just like an opening, like if you had a minute in the elevator to say to somebody a story about why they should care about URI and give money to it, what would that story be? And remember to make sure the first sentence would excite the audience. And maybe you want to use the first sentence you already wrote and just make it a couple-minute story. And then we're going to, after you have a couple minutes to do that, we're going to go into small groups and tell your story in 2 to 3 minutes each, okay? So I'm going to give you a couple minutes to work on it. and then we'll go into small groups. Put it in the chat if you need a reminder what you're writing about. Oh, and it's up on the slide too.
And Inoue asked for the examples of the first lines again. Maybe you did that go in the chat maybe or up on the screen?
I think so.
Yes, I will put that up on the screen.
Okay, you're going to go into small groups and you're just going to tell a very brief, even if it's just the start of the story, that you might use with about something about URI, something you might tell someone in an elevator, very short, couple minutes. And you're going to go into small groups of 3. Again, if you can appoint a timekeeper and each of you go around. And so.
How much time, Linda?
We'll take about 10 minutes, but about 3 minutes each.
Thank you.
And you'll get a 1-minute warning when we're going to bring you back.
All the rooms are open.
Brother James, you need to say join or something? Oh, yes. Good.
together.
Okay, is everybody back, Tony?
Yes, they are, Linda.
Okay, so Biswadeb had to leave us and Monica's now left us. So, okay, so what was, what about the stories that you heard made you interested in the work of URI, if you were a funder? You can raise your hand or write in chat, either way. What did you hear that would made you want to fund URI or join URI or something? Father James had written, okay, go ahead, Father James. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry for that mistake. I was mute and I was speaking.
Okay.
I recall the story, real story of the tragic earthquake which took place in 2005.
Mhm.
And many cities of Pakistan and Kashmir, some parts of India, they were destroyed. Many houses, thousands of houses were destroyed. And in that earthquake, about 75,000 people were killed. And over here, I experienced that URI all around the world express great solidarity with the suffering people of Pakistan and Kashmir, and we were able to take tons of clothes and food to give them in the troubled areas. And it was those trips were solidarity trips were organized by the URI Pakistan, and donations came from all over the world by many different members of URI in America, in Europe, in Africa, and so on. It was a great manifestation that we are all brothers and sisters. We belong to one humanity, one family, no matter what our religion is. So it was a very, very powerful expression of URI expressing solidarity with the people who suffered this massive earthquake.
Thank you so much. So we have a lot of things being written up here that was put into chat. Impact, a strong shift in the mind of the person. This one's very intriguing to me. From adversary to peace builder. Transformation, learning, hearing the plight of girls in Malawi who are sold into marriage and could attend school. Enthusiasm, impact, and dedication. In a way, wrote, be able to join people by love through the same goal to build a better world for children. Karen, you want to read yours, Karen?
Yes, with pleasure, Linda. Initially, it was the uniqueness of the gathering of all the enormous diversity of religions and traditions and the spirituality that attracted me to join, and also campaign for URI in my part of the world where the diversity is difficult to bring about.
Thank you. YouTube, you have your hand up?
I already wrote in the chat impact, like, listening to the stories and the impact it has got. So I've already mentioned. Yeah.
Okay. Maria said youth focus. Mamoon?
Yes, I believe one of the stories that I always tell about URI is we provide a very safe and friendly environment for people who will not have such a chance to meet the other. I'm speaking about mainly about the Israeli-Arab conflict. Many young Israelis are afraid to come to Arab countries, are afraid to come to Jordan. But if you tell them the story and they see that we have done this before, they will join and they will change their mind. They know the human side of the conflict and the others, and they try to feel, to put themselves in the shoe of the other. So such an environment will not be possible without URI.
Wonderful. Wonderful. That's beautiful. Okay. And how could you see using these kind of stories to make your reports to URI or your newsletters much more exciting? Could you see using stories for that? Or getting members of CCs to use stories more? Maybe you already do that. What do you think?
I think it can be, I think that it can be hard to figure out how to deliver a story in a way that is really effective. Like Linda, your opening line about your experience with the KKK is really attention getting. And I don't know if you had to work hard to come up with that opening line, but I would just say that for myself, I think I could imagine that I could really, it could take me like half an hour working with somebody else to practice coming up with a good opening line that would really get people's attention and make them want to hear more. Instead of just kind of relying on them being interested in what's in my heart.
Right, right. Well, let me say that it didn't take me hardly any time to write that first sentence, but I've been practicing a long time. So I'd say, yes, the first time it might take a half hour. And then you begin to turn that part of your brain on, kind of that creative. Maybe you do your little exercise to open up the juices, but it becomes a practice. And so I timed myself 5 minutes to write 3 stories, and I was able to do it. But I'm a storyteller, and I've had a lot of practice. So I think many of y'all are natural storytellers, and if you're not, you just need to work on getting that part of your brain working. And sometimes it's just getting out of the self-criticism, getting out of how you ought to be saying it. And that's why I think storytelling is so empowering to people who aren't highly educated. In fact, sometimes I think education can get in the way of storytelling because we start thinking analytically so much. But it's so empowering to others because it's coming from the heart. And if you can always think about it coming from the heart, coming from emotional place, then there's a place of joy and excitement of telling the story. And that's why it becomes so effective. But I know for a lot of people that takes practice. And so if you work with these opening lines and look for other stories that have great opening lines, you know, just as you're reading, as you're talking, and it will become more of a practice. I do think it's really important to put stories into newsletters and fundraising letters because that's what's really going to emotionally bring people to you. And Angelina wrote that, and in a way says social networks and news, social media, TV, local and national newspapers and magazines. And Father James has shared several stories of URI helping earthquake-affected people. But if you think about the news and you hear a story about earthquakes or floods or horrible disasters, and you hear it and you feel compassion, but it really doesn't connect as much until they interview, the news will interview an individual who says, you know, I lost my parents, or I lost my child, or I lost everything in my home, and here's the only thing I have left. And all of a sudden it becomes personal, and you can put yourself in their place. So that's why news stories often will, even though it's a major disaster that has hit thousands and thousands of people, they'll tell the story of one person's experience, because that's how people often connect and how it becomes real to them. In a way, you had your hand up.
Yes, because when I was reading the chapter, and it's like, it's a flower for you, okay, Linda? It's a flower, it's a compliment. Because when I was reading the chapter, it's like being here, because it pushed me to go inside. And it was a very good exercise. And what I feel now, and I believe now after your teachings, is that it's really a difference. Because we have the culture to tell stories and tell news, but without connecting from the heart and from your own history and from your own experience, sincerely, honestly. And I think that is the difference. That is what make people to connect with you. It's not because we have a lot of stories, very moving stories of what is RCCs doing in their localities. But being able to tell them connected with the personal history and the personal life, it make a difference. And I wanted to tell you this because the exercise and the reading helped me, not only having a tool for doing better my work as a regional coordinator, but it helped me as a tool for myself, going myself and discover why I'm here and not there, what I'm doing this work and not another work, etc., etc. I wanted to give you this flower, how to say my master of the brain. That's a flower put you in your head. When nobody says beautiful things to you, just put out your flower and put it again.
Thank you. That's the most beautiful thing anyone's ever said about my writing. So if y'all hadn't had a chance to read that chapter, you know, you have it in your inbox, and hopefully you'll get the book before too long. Thank you, in a way. I really appreciate that. So we're going to bring up the slide that we earlier filled out on slide 6. Why do you think storytelling is important in our work for peace and justice? And you can look over what people said, but I just wonder if there's anything you would add now that we've done some of this work. Is there anything you would add about what storytelling can do? Father James?
I have experienced that usually people remember the stories.
Yes. Yes, thank you.
So it's important to tell stories. Oh, yes, I heard that story from so-and-so, from so-and-so, from so-and-so.
Yes.
So these are very powerful tools of communicating one's message to the other through a story.
Yes.
And like fundraising, for example, it's very important to tell them the stories, concrete examples, and then people are motivated to give. Instead of talking in the air, making story, putting the things in a concrete way, that really motivates and motivates the hearts of the people to be generous, to help those who are in need. One example.
Yes, good. Karen.
Thank you, Linda. The stories assist in building relationships, and it makes what's happening real to people.
Yes, thank
for
you.
people.
Thank you, yes. Q2 wrote, historical facts are manipulated and stories can help revive the true facts. And Alice wrote, gets people's attention. That's great. Anything else you would add that we didn't have before? Karima?
Stories can explain change, huh? Change happening in a very nice way.
Yes.
Positive change.
That's right. And in fact, that takes us to our next tip. But before we go there, is there anything else people want to add? Mamoon.
Yes, I believe the storytelling is a very effective way to communicate with grassroots communities. So
Yeah.
they think the story is related to them instead of being a fancy media or press. You are telling very grassroots realities.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point for us as we go around doing grassroots organizing work. We actually start by asking people to tell their story. We say, what is it you love? What do you love about this community? What would you change? And we get their stories first before we start introducing the work. And that's a very powerful way to go about organizing as well. So thank you for that. Grassroots organizing. Okay.
Anaway had one more.
Oh, Anaway?
In the chat.
Let us do introspection and connect with the wholeness. Stories let us do introspection and connect with the wholeness. It's so true. So true. Thank you. If you want more experience of listening for first lines and telling stories, TED Talks, TED Talks are very good way to find those kind of stories, and you can actually tap into TED Talks in issues you're interested in, and they always have the best first lines. So because they know they have to catch the audience's attention in a very few moments. And so that's a good place to practice with if you want to listen to other stories that people are telling. All right, so thank you for this slide, and we'll be sending this out along with everything else. We're going to briefly touch on the science of storytelling. As I mentioned before, scientists have done a lot of work on storytelling, and they've looked at how it affects the brain. And Uri Hassan, a Princeton neuroscientist, actually says the story is the only way to activate parts in the brain so that the listener turns the story into their idea and experience and can move people to action. And I wanted to give one example. I'm sorry? Someone say something? No, okay. Consider this story about the death of Michael Brown. In the city of Ferguson, Missouri, Michael Brown, an unarmed African-American young man, is fatally shot by a white police officer. His devastating and unjust murder catalyzes action locally and nationally as people take to the streets chanting, "Power to the people," and "Black Lives Matter." Now, those two lines mobilize people, power to the people and Black Lives Matter. And it actually can activate, those action statements can activate the motor cortex part of the brain. And it inspires and elicits action. So listeners can experience and better relate to what the speaker intends. In other words, stories have the power to transpose listeners into the action itself, making them more inclined to sign a petition or attend a rally, take part in a boycott, or contact their political representatives. And even though this story happened several years ago, Ferguson has become this incredibly activated community that is now doing voter registration and get out the vote and electing new people. If people who know the story knows it was about 80-90% people of color, mostly African American, and yet all of the elected officials and the people in power were white. And so they've been able to begin to turn that around, and that action statement helped do that. So in closing, any questions about the science? Any questions about that? I just wanted to touch on that briefly. Okay. So for our closing, I want you to think about one way that you're going to use storytelling, or the story you told or heard today that you will tell someone else, through how will you use storytelling in your work for URI. We're going to make a list of that so people may hear other people's ideas and think about that. But what is one way you're going to use storytelling in the coming month? Either one of the exercises, a story you told, a story you heard. How will you use it? Karen?
Thanks, Linda. One of the things I'm going to be doing is going to the UK to do a presentation to fundraise using the video clips and the stories of the actual people on the ground, of the girls on the ground, to share stories and to fundraise for them.
That's fabulous. That's an amazing way to do it. And I see a lot of activity in the chat. Kutub says, recently we added a session on storytelling during the workshops. That's great. Abraham, we can have storytelling sessions during zonal assemblies. Wonderful. Kutub said CC leaders shared their stories of their work and successes. Okay, great. And I believe Karen did say the UK, did you? That you're going to
Yes, I did. Indeed, yes. Thank you.
Yes. Anyone else? How will you use storytelling in the coming month? In a way, how will you use it?
I think I will use in a different ways. But what came now to my mind after the exercise is that I'm going to ask a Mayan young woman from Guatemala that have a very good project I was talking about with Alice yesterday evening. And she had a project that she's going to apply for a program of the United Nations of Youth Creative Project with Ambience. And she had the idea, she applied with her project, which is using materials that you, ¿cómo se dice? Materials that you threw out to put with earth and to do houses in their small community.
Nice.
With people from her CC, with our young people. So I think it's a very good idea, but I want now she tell me the story why she create this project.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yes. Okay, who else? Who hasn't gone here? Got Father James is going to tell stories in meeting URI coordinators and participating in the workshops.
I can go, Linda.
Yes, Alice.
I'm going to look for opportunities to include storytelling in meetings.
Wonderful.
It doesn't feel clear to me where it goes, but I'm going to look for opportunities.
Great. I look forward to hearing back.
In thinking of that, I think of our gathering in June and how we create space for storytelling during the program, but also after programs, and perhaps there's storytelling evenings or storytelling lunch, or so that we include storytelling in our June meeting.
That's a great idea. We, several of the networks that I've built does storytelling just for fun. And it's been an amazing and very team building exercise to just have people tell their funny stories. Their, we had a group started telling stories about driving while Black in the United States. And that's a big thing here. If you're Black and you're driving, or brown, you're more likely to get arrested, more likely to get tickets for minor things. And then it turned into someone telling a story while driving while white. And it began to just show this major difference between privilege and oppression that would have not happened so strongly and deeply if we'd done a workshop on that. Just these funny stories, tragic stories as well, but told in a funny way, became this real teaching moment that was just amazing, and it builds a lot of community and understanding. So thanks. Angelina said storytelling we can use during our next URI Europe board and staff meeting. We're going to use the example with the milestones. Perfect. I can't wait to hear how that turns out. Okay. Anything else? Have we got everybody? I hear a child in the background. That's sweet. Okay. So now the last thing is just for someone. Yes, Mamoon?
Yes. Can I?
Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Mamoon.
Okay, right.
Mamoon, you have the floor if you want to say something.
I think we
then maybe mute him.
Can't hear him. He doesn't show muted, but we just aren't able to hear him. All right, so I would love for y'all to do an evaluation. I have to say we had a small group in the first storytelling, and I got a lot of feedback that helped inform how I was going to do this workshop. And I'll be offering this workshop more publicly as well. So I would love your comments, feedback, anything that we could improve, what you liked, and how the reading helped you, any of that. And next month, we'll be coming back to talk about how we use storytelling and any issues that came up with it, anything you're struggling with, and what's worked, what isn't working, and we can go deeper, dive deeper into how it works for you. So I think Tony's going to put the evaluation, it's in the chat, the evaluation link. If you wouldn't mind taking a few minutes to fill that out, I really appreciate it. And we're going to end 2 minutes early. So I say goodbye, and I just so appreciate everyone's participation. It's been fabulous.
So good to see you all and be with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much. It was great hearing the stories, sharing stories.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Karen,
With you, Linda, with all of you.
congratulations again.
Thank you.
Congratulations to the Cape Town team.
Love you.
Yes, congrats to Karen and team.
Yes,
we should have a party.
We're gonna have to go to the Holy Temple.
Did that? I love it.
Party in June.
See you for the stories.
Yes,
Yeah.
also for Kutab.
I'll do that. I'll do that.
Yes, Father James.
Yes, we'll have party.
Yes, sure.
In June, yes, to celebrate your award.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, Father, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.